In this video, I'll discuss user interface design. Windows apps offer powerful functionality that can produce any number of tasks, but if an app's interface is poorly thought out or implemented, then even the best app can fail. I'm sure you've been there, an app that you really need to work the way you want it to, but you can't find what you're looking for. There's an age-old design adage that states a user will only try to find something 3 times before giving up. And if an app isn't well laid out and easy to use, people will probably try to find something else that does a job for them, even if it's not as good. Interface is so important. So if you haven't nailed the interface, that app you spent all sorts of time and effort creating could fail, and that's simply not necessary. When you consider your interface design, you can draw from other things that you've seen. Perhaps you use an app that was just perfect in the way the interface was laid out, so you can draw from that. And keep in mind that there's a relatively simple formula that most applications follow. Application suites like Microsoft Office or Adobe Creative Cloud don't stray too far from the path when going from app to app, which is why you can integrate your workflow when switching from Word to PowerPoint or Photoshop to Illustrator, for example. On the flip side, there are some apps out there that come with really exotic interfaces, using a custom paradigm and custom interface mechanisms. I've seen and used many of them, and I'm sure you have too. Does that work? Well, yes it does, but only if the app designer paid attention to the user's needs and not his own. Why an app succeeds or fails is based largely on its usability, and the reason you see a standard look and feel across products by different application developers is because it works, and because users don't like being forced to learn new paradigms. The consistency there is what makes people like you, me, and every other user out there appreciate the simplicity found in applications that pay attention to what works. With that being said, there are some standard interface elements that should be part of any application. Keep in mind that this will sound very much like the website design that you've learned, and that's because whether we're talking about a standalone application or a web application, the issues relating to functionality, the usability, is the same. So first is navigation. Navigation lets a user select what they want to see, the functions and content. Navigation allows users to go from one place to the other, thus the name navigation. Commands are the elements that let users perform functions, open a file, cut, change the view, move an object from one place on the screen to another place on the screen. Then there's the actual content, the words, shapes, or pixels that are the product the user is focused on, the documents basically. Now, these 3 elements are not required in every application or every application screen. You may have the need to provide navigation as well as content, but not commands. Or you may get by with providing just content and commands, but not navigation. It really comes down to what your app intends to do. Microsoft provides some useful information about how user interface elements might work for applications designed for their platforms, and it even provides some examples. And I won't try to tackle the subject of user interface design because it's a huge topic that goes way beyond the actual physicality that defines what a Windows application should do. It's often a very philosophical discussion among designers and developers because the mechanics are just a facet of what an interface should do. A good place to begin when you consider user interface design is Fitts' Law, which predates modern computers. In fact, it dates back to 1954 and describes the distance to a target using mathematical algorithms. And while it wasn't meant to explain the modern user interface, because computers weren't a thing yet, it remarkably still applies to modern UI design, and is still the first thing people learn when they learn UI design. There are a few considerations that you can undertake when considering a user interface. First, and this applies to many things, it's the KISS principle, short for Keep It Simple, Stupid. Now, some people have attributed this famous concept to Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, but I believe it was first coined by the US military in the 1960s. And it is a valuable paradigm for software development and UI design. It can be very easy to let an application or its interface get out of control, and I guarantee it will happen quickly and it will be difficult to find your way back. One important way to avoid this happening is to plan out your concept and prototype before you even write a line of code, but it helps to keep things as simple as possible, or simpler, to paraphrase a quote often attributed to Einstein. And when planning your navigation, I can't stress enough that you pay attention to the hierarchy of content. You know, the breadcrumbs that find their way into many modern applications, the steps that you set up so that a user can move backwards by clicking a step. They're great and a valuable part of the modern interface, but if the names of the crumbs get very long or the crumb steps become too granular, users will quickly get frustrated. And you can extrapolate all this to the options. Lots of options are great for power and functionality, but are they really necessary? I think the more options you give a user, the more chance there is that user error will occur. The takeaway here, provide what's necessary for the application of function the way you outlined it in the planning stage, but no more.